Exposed. The sinister depths revealed a cursed entity that should never exist. The quiet suburb of Forest Grove wore an unsettling stillness. The air hung heavy, cloaked in dread whispered through the neighborhood, where laughter had once danced with the wind, now drowned in an eerie silence. Sarah Parker was oblivious to the dark web spun around their little home. It crept in, lurking beneath her weary determination like an uninvited shadow. She was just a single mother, struggling to juggle late shifts at the local hospital while her 12-year-old son, Ethan, braved the long nights alone, locked in a modest house now filled more with tension than love. On this particular night, Sarah returned home, exhaustion battling her instincts. The flickering lights greeted her like ghostly specters. The kitchen felt colder than usual, a chill that sank into her bones. As she shuffled around, a thud echoed from the basement, a sound like the world cracking open. Just the plumbing, she told herself, but even her own words felt hollow. As she stirred the pot on the stove, her heart raced, tightening around the edges of fear. Suddenly, she spotted a worn, handwritten journal lying on the kitchen table, its leather cover cracked and dusty. It gave off a coldness she couldn't shake. Trembling slightly, she opened it, only to find her grandmother's scrawled handwriting. It felt wrong, almost cursed. The words were filled with sorrow and longing, fragmented declarations that hinted at forgotten tales veiled in shadow. Why was this here? She breathed, dread coiling in her gut as darkness oozed from the pages like a malignant fog. Ethan had been acting strangely since she started her new shifts, his imagination worn thin by solitude. He spoke of whispers rising from the basement, claiming it was the air thick with longing, not just a figment of childish fear. Dismissing his worries had felt easy at first until the headlines began to change. Disappearance in Forest Grove, local community on edge, they read. Panic gnawed at her, every missing neighbor a haunting reminder of something looming in the dark. Sarah's instincts kicked in like never before. Her world felt unmade, unraveling at the edges. When she approached the local authorities, the blank stares felt like betrayal. They shrugged off her fears, and she realized the police were caught in their own web of secrecy. The fear in the air was suffocating as rumors of an ancient witch circulated, a being said to haunt the town, a dark force that fed off fear. The same words swirled around Ethan when he shared his stories with classmates, and even they dismissed him. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with dread gnawing at her stomach. She ventured into the basement, the door creaking ominously as she pushed it open. Each step downward felt like a plunge into darkness, her fears coiling tighter with every heartbeat. The air was dank, a palpable weight pressing upon her chest. Shadows danced along the walls, features twisting grotesquely as if mocking her. The whispers grew louder, chanting in a cadence that clawed at her sanity. Just as she felt a hand brush against the back of her neck, the realization hit her with bone-chilling clarity. This wasn't just a home anymore. Something sinister had rooted itself deep within. The moment stretched as shadows closed in, and a voice, a ghostly echo, resonated through the basement, breathing the words of her neighbors now lost. "You'll join us soon." The question crashed over her. Would she and Ethan be next? The chilling reality settled in as darkness nibbled at the edges of her vision, the echoes of betrayal from those she once trusted trailing behind. Time slipped away, and fear took the wheel. What would she uncover before it was too late? The basement's shadows thickened, pooling like ink where the flickering light struggled to reach. Sarah's breath quickened, shallow gasps filling the oppressive space. "Ethan," she whispered, but the sound got lost, swallowed by the shadows that now seemed to twist and contort, inching ever closer. The murmurs intensified, a cacophony of voices intertwining, rising above her pounding heart. "You know," one voice hissed, a disembodied whisper that slid across her skin, icy and sinister. "You should have listened." A shiver raced down her spine as the memories of Ethan's stories flooded her mind. The creature, The whispers, he had spoken of them with wide eyes, but she had only brushed it off as the product of a lonely boy's imagination. Now, as the weight of reality crashed over her, the realization settled like 1,000 bricks. Her son had known something. That a creak echoed from the farthest corner of the basement. Sarah turned sharply, adrenaline surging. "Ethan," she called again, voice echoing in the suffocating dark. But the darkness merely swallowed her cries. Steeling herself, Sarah took a step back, her fingers brushing against the cold, damp wall. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and fear, a tangible thing that threatened to choke her. She was no longer alone in the basement. The whispers were a chorus, swirling around her with malice. "Join us," they beckoned, their tone like a dark melody that scraped at her resolve. "You are part of the story now." Panic surged, and she stumbled back toward the stairs, glancing over her shoulder as if to catch a glimpse of the twisted forms that lurked just beyond the pool of weak light. The realization hit her: this wasn't just about her anymore. It was Ethan, too. She had to find her way back to him. Climbing the steps, she could hear faint thuds above. Not the usual creaks of the old house, but something heavier, more deliberate. Heart pounding, she grasped the railing tightly as she put one foot in front of the other. Every step felt like a negotiation with the darkness. The wooden boards groaned under her weight, protesting her ascent. Bursting through the basement door, Sarah shut it with trembling hands and leaned against it like it was the last barrier between her and the horrors below. But the terrifying thought crept in that the real horror might lurk just beyond the door. "Mom." Ethan's voice broke through the silence from the living room, childlike but shadowed with a tremor. He sounded closer, more vulnerable than ever. I heard them too. Stay there," she shouted, panic threading her voice. She paused, swallowing hard. "Just don't come near the basement." But when she turned to face him, his small silhouette stood framed by the dim light from the hallway, the shadows chasing at his heels. Nothing was as it seemed. He looked different, eyes wide, pupils pricked with a dark emotion she couldn't place. He didn't wait for her to make a decision. His feet moved closer, crossing the threshold into the dark that seemed to deepen around them. "Mom, it's not just the basement. They're in my room." Two whispering my name, terror coursed through her, a cold rush that seized her limbs. "What do you mean?" she gasped, inching toward him. She could feel the unearthly chill radiating from the door they had just shut, shadows like tendrils reaching for Ethan. As she reached out, he turned back toward the hallway, fear etched across his face. "They say we have to come. They say we belong to them." Now the world shrank to that moment, the darkness closing in. The enormity of it, the inevitability of what lingered below, pressed down on her like a weight. "Run!" Sarah screamed. But the shout felt futile, lost against the whisper that wrapped around them both, drawing them in with a pull that felt nearly magnetic. A chilling invitation to the depths they had just begun to uncover. As Ethan's eyes flickered between fear and entrancement, Sarah trembled, realizing they were running out of time. What would they find if they didn't escape? The air hummed around them, heavy with something ancient and sinister, drawing them closer to a fate they couldn't yet comprehend. Would they resist the whispers, or would they be drawn into the depths of darkness together? The choice hung in the air, slithering and shifting like the shadows behind them. The whispers intensified, a haunting lullaby that both soothed and terrified. Sarah felt the weight of their presence bearing down on her chest, and she could see the shadows writhe with eager anticipation in Ethan's wide, glassy eyes. "Mom, we have to go. They'll be here soon." His voice cracked, a mixture of fear and something almost enchanting. She wanted to shake him, to pull him back to reality, but something held her just as firmly. "No," she spat, stepping forward, the air thickening around her. "We can't go anywhere. We have to fight this." But she felt the fight drain from her, the whispers wrapping around her thoughts like vines tightening their grip. As if sensing her wavering resolve, the darkness seemed to swell, pulsating as though it were alive. The shadows stretched toward Ethan, dark fingers curling in a slow, deliberate dance, hungry for something only they understood. He shivered under their touch, primitive fear spread across his small face as he backed up, almost into her. "Mom, please," he begged, trembling. She reached out, grasping his small hand, squeezing until she felt his warmth real, reassuring. We have to get to the front door. We can make it. The idea of escape flickered like a dying flame, but she had to believe it was enough. She turned, pulling Ethan along, but a force tugged at them from the depths, insistent and unyielding. Sarah resisted, each step a battle against a tide threatening to pull them back. Where do you think you're going? A voice hissed, sharper than before, echoing from the depths of the shadows. Shadows shifted, swirling like a tempest, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw something in their depths' eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light, predatory and cruel. Run, she shouted again, feeling that urgency swell within her. She stumbled forward, dragging Ethan behind her, out of the reach of those malignant claws. The hallway felt endless, undergoing a grotesque transformation with every step walls closing in. The once familiar home now an alien labyrinth. The screams of the whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. Each voice twisted and intertwined, creating a horrifying symphony meant to ensnare. Join us, they sang to her. You belong to us. Ethan's grip tightened. I can't let them take you, Mom. His words were pure panic, desperation spilling from him as the shadows laughed, a guttural sound laced with malice. No, we will not go to them, Sarah shouted, her heart hammering against her rib cage. She rushed toward the front door, almost there, but an overwhelming chill cut through her, freezing her in place. The darkness coiled around, seeping into her soul, and she felt something brush against her mind, a fleeting vision. The creature Ethan had described, a twisted figure with gnarled limbs and that hungry gaze. You wanted to know, the whisper taunted, what lies beneath the surface. Come and see, she recoiled, shaking her head violently. No, we're leaving. But as she turned to push the door open, it slammed shut with a resounding thud, rattling the old frame. Mom, Ethan cried out, terror spilling forth. What do we do? The world around her shifted, the beams of light dimming as the shadows advanced, swallowing the hallway. Panic clawed at her throat. If they didn't find a way out, they would be consumed. A blast of cold air rushed past her, and the whispers swelled to a deafening roar. Join us now, and become one with the darkness. The words wrapped around her like a shroud, threatening to suffocate any hope remaining. Ethan, this way. She pulled him toward the window at the end of the hall, praying it wasn't locked. But from behind them, the whispers morphed into a singular chilling voice, urgent, commanding. Join us, it whispered, echoing with the promise of something unknowable, a fate that no one would want to face. Sarah fumbled with the window, fighting against the dark. She had to get Ethan away. If only they could escape this suffocating embrace of shadows. As the cold breeze cut through, whispering secrets of despair, realization dawned upon her. This darkness wasn't just a thing to fear. It was stalking them, waiting for a moment of weakness. Listen, she hissed, face close to Ethan's as the dark enveloped them. We have to fight. But the dark laughed soft, low, hungry. Its grip tightened around them. Would they escape, or would the shadows claim them both, pulling them into the story they now had no choice but to embrace? The window might be their only hope, but would it be enough? Mom, hurry! Ethan cried, his voice a strangled whisper as horror clawed at his throat. The haunting laughter from the shadows slithered through the air, echoing like a death knell. Sarah felt an icy sweat break out across her skin. They had to get away. She yanked the window, desperation lending her strength. It resisted, stuck fast as if the very wood had conspired with the malevolent darkness. She pounded against it, panic seeping into her bones. Come on, come on. But the shadows were relentless. They twirled and coiled, sneering at their suffering. Join us, they whispered, seductive and chilling, promising an end to the struggle. Not now. Sarah shouted at the void as a wave of rage fueled her, but it dissolved as quickly as it built. The paralysis of fear rushed back, pouring into her thoughts. What would happen if they didn't escape? Trust me, she yelled back at Ethan, her voice steadying her wobbling resolve. We can break through. She turned back to the window, digging her nails into the frame. On three, we push. The weight of doubt filled her chest, but there was no room for it now. They had to try. 1, 2. Suddenly, the wind outside roared to life, blowing uneven patterns around them, almost like it was guiding them, or preparing to consume them whole. Shadows leaped toward the gusts, tangled in a furious dance. Mom, Ethan screamed, and this time, there was a loud crash as the glass shattered. Sarah blinked in disbelief. Jagged shards rained down around them, mingling with the dark. "Let us go," she cried, pulling Ethan close as she scrambled over the splintered glass. The air was thick, stinging their lungs, tasting of ash and despair. They landed outside in a tangle on the damp grass, breathless. The night sky seemed to leer down at them, cloaking the world in a blanket of unnatural murkiness. But there was no time to celebrate their escape. The shadows poured out of the house like ink spilling from a broken bottle, thriving in the moonlight. Its threads encircled Sarah and Ethan, pulling tighter with every breath they took. "Run! Don't look back!" she barked, yanking Ethan to his feet. They dashed across the yard, the tempting whispers still echoing in their minds. "You cannot hide," the words echoed like a sinister lullaby, drowning out the sound of their pounding hearts. Rooted in the ground, a massive tree loomed ahead, its twisted branches resembling skeletal arms reaching for them. They slid behind it, panting, their eyes wide with terror as the shadows swirled just yards away. "Are they gone?" Ethan breathed, his small frame trembling beside her. Sarah shook her head slowly, heart racing. "I don't know." Suddenly, they heard a soft rustling, like flesh clawing against bark. A dark shape emerged from the void of shadows, something twisted and grotesque, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. It was watching them, its face devoid of a recognizable form, reminding Sarah of a nightmare that lingered just out of reach. When it spoke, the voice was as slippery as oil, seeping into her mind. "You've come to play. So many have failed before you. Will you fare better?" Frozen in a stillness that terrified her, Sarah couldn't look away. "No," Ethan stammered beside her. "Look away, Ethan." She grabbed his shoulder, forcing him to focus on her. "We have to keep moving." The creature twisted in place, its ghastly grin widening. "There is no escape from where you tread. Run," Sarah yelled, bursting from their hiding spot. They sprinted deeper into the yard, the whispers fetching echoes of their own terror. She thought she could almost feel the darkness breathe, hungry for their fear. But a creeping doubt curled in Sarah's gut. What if it's right? She thought, gasping for air. What if there is no escape? As they barreled past the tree line and into the woods behind their home, shadows flickered like fireflies in the corners of her vision. The woods loomed ominously, branches clawing toward them. Then, without warning, the whispers became a steady chant, a collective voice that roared a singular phrase through the cool night air. "Join us," Sarah felt. The very ground trembled beneath them, as though the earth was alive, aching, giving birth to something horrific. The darkness thrummed with possibility. But buried deep within her, a flame ignited, a spark of defiance that screamed, "Not today." Suddenly, they stumbled upon a clearing, lit faintly by the moon. Sheltered within it was an aged stone circle, worn and crumbling, but resonating with something powerful. "What is this place?" Ethan breathed, eyes wide as he looked around. Before that question could hang heavily in the air, dark figures appeared at the edge of the circle, dancing closer, faces obscured but unbearably familiar. Sarah turned to Ethan, heart pounding. "Stay close." But the shadows had other plans. They surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness clawing and yanking. Sarah felt a flip side of dread and ache inside her marrow as she clenched Ethan, ready to face whatever awaited. A decision had to be made: stand their ground or confront the unknown. But deep in the shadows, something whispered a name she knew she could never forget. What was this dread? What hidden truth lay before them, gnawing at the edifice of freedom? Ethan's grip tightened around Sarah's hand as they stood rooted in the clearing. The shadows seemed to pulse, breathing around them like a predatory beast, and she could almost feel the cold, wet breath of something ancient at the nape of her neck. "Mom, I'm scared," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling, barely a breath against the oppressive darkness. "Stay close, Ethan," she instructed, trying to sound braver than she felt. The dark figures began to take form, a swirling mass of indistinct faces and hollow sockets, each shadow reflecting a piece of her memory. Friends, neighbors, their laughter twisted into a haunting symphony, beckoning them into the depths. "Join us," they sang, a melody that pulled at Sarah's heartstrings like a cruel joke. She fought against the charm of their words, even as the memories tugged at her, unraveling her thoughts. "Can you hear them?" Ethan asked, his voice small. Sarah glanced down, noticing that his eyes, usually bright and full of life, now reflected a flickering shadow of doubt. I hear them, she admitted, but we can't listen. With a pulse of adrenaline, Sarah yanked Ethan toward the stone circle. She had no idea what it was, but it felt like the last thread of hope. There was a power emanating from the stones, an ancient energy that seemed to push back against the darkness. She could almost see the shadows recoiling, their grotesque forms flickering like candle flames. Here, she shouted, bringing them into the center of the circle. They huddled together, and the chanting grew louder, a menacing roar that resonated in the marrow of her bones. Protect us, she whispered, though she wasn't sure who or what she was praying to. As if in response, the stones shimmered, a faint light illuminating the clearing, revealing an inscription etched into the weathered surface. Sarah leaned closer, tracing the words with trembling fingers. They were faint but recognizable, a protective charm woven from desperation and sacrifice. The shadows recoiled again, their howls rising higher, increasing in intensity. You have no power here, they shrieked, and the ground beneath her shook violently. Don't let go of my hand, Ethan cried, eyes wide with terror. I want tea, Sarah promised, squeezing his small hand tightly. Despite the fear constricting her chest, she felt a fury rise within her. We're not giving up. With every ounce of strength, she began to chant the words she barely understood, unsure if they held any meaning or power. But instinct urged her to try, and as she spoke, the air around them vibrated. The shadows howled and writhed, their forms blurring as if trying to escape an invisible grip. You are ours, they roared, an amalgam of voices twisted in rage and despair, echoing through the trees and slicing into her mind. We belong to no one, Sarah shouted back, the chant spilling from her lips, rising against the darkness, growing louder with each repetition. With each word, the stones glowed brighter, bathing the clearing in a warm, fierce light that pushed back against the clutches of shadow. But just as it seemed they were breaking through, the dark figures surged forward, a wrathful tide, their twisted faces morphing into something more recognizable. People she had known, loved ones lost and memories buried in the past. Join us. Come home, they cried, pulling at her heartstrings, tears pooling in her eyes as guilt clawed at her. Mom, don't listen, Ethan shrieked, as he released his grasp momentarily to cover his ears. Sarah felt like she was falling, suspended between the light of the stones and the dark despair enveloping her. She wanted to scream, to sob, to give in to the temptation of those familiar voices calling her home. She felt her knees buckle, she was losing herself, but deep within, that spark of defiance ignited again. No, we keep fighting, she yelled, gathering her resolve. Fueled by desperation, she dived back into the chant, refusing to falter. The light intensified, the glow now a beacon pushing against the encroaching darkness, squaring off in a battle for their souls. Suddenly, there was a shudder, and for a heartbeat, the shadows danced as if in hesitation. That flicker of uncertainty ignited her spirit. We're not afraid of you. But as the shadows dwindled, movement caught the edge of her vision. A figure emerged from the depths, cloaked in swirling darkness, the shape looming more prominently now, enveloped in shadows, yet undeniably familiar. Sarah, it spoke, the voice smooth and captivating, resonating within her like a sonic pulse. You can't fight your own blood. Her heart sank as the realization hit her. This presence, this torment, ran deeper than fear. It was an echo from her past, a truth she could never outrun. The shadows pressed in again, and in that moment, a chilling question unfurled itself in the pull of the night. What price will you pay to escape? With those words, the world around her began to warp, swallowing them whole in a swirl of darkness, clawing at the last shreds of hope. In the swirling blackness, Sarah clutched Ethan tighter, both petrified and resolute. What did that singular voice mean? And as the darkness pressed closer, what price could she possibly pay to escape this fate? The darkness thickened, suffocating and tangible. Sarah felt the weight of it on her chest, pressing her down, constricting her breaths. Ethan squeezed her hand harder, his tiny fingers cold and slick with sweat. She could hear the throbbing pulse of the shadows surrounding them, a restless heartbeat echoing with sinister intent. "Mom, I can't," he whimpered, his voice wrapping around her heart like barbed wire. "Stay with me, Ethan," she urged, her voice cracking. The shadows swirled closer, whispering accusations, the past slithering back into her mind. Each face they wore was a reminder of past mistakes. Sorrow turned monstrous. The figure in the center of it all stepped forward, dragging the air with it a distorted image of someone she once loved. "Sarah, you've abandoned me." "You know it's true," the voice echoed, a serpent's hiss twisting through the darkness. "Come home. We can be together again." Her pulse raced, a drumbeat of panic. Memories crashed like waves, her childhood echoing around her, laughter on warm summer evenings, soft hugs, the sweetness of unbroken promises. But beneath it all lay a festering regret. "No," she shouted defiantly, shaking her head. "You're not real. You're just shadows." "Shadows are made of truths," the figure hissed, stepping into the light, eyes glimmering with a malicious sheen. "You cannot flee what is part of you. You cannot escape your own heart." As it approached, the light from the stones flickered. Each flicker felt like a heartbeat, as if the stones themselves were wavering between resolve and surrender. Sarah gritted her teeth, grounding herself in the touch of her son's hand. She had to be the shield, the barrier between him and the encroaching despair. "Join us," the shadows crooned again, the chorus of lost voices rising in haunting harmony, gripping at her soul. "Embrace the darkness that is your fate." "Shut up," Sarah screamed, holding on to the chant like a lifeline, her mind racing with desperation. But with every word, the shadows pushed back, their energy clashing against hers, threatening to swallow her whole. Suddenly, Ethan's voice cut through the clamor. "Mom, the stones. They're changing." She looked down, horrified. The runes began to morph, twisting into dark designs that pulsed ominously, echoing the aura of the shadows. "No, no." Panic ignited in her chest, a wildfire of dread. What were they becoming? The ground trembled violently, dislodging her from the momentary focus, and she staggered back, the chant dying on her lips. Cracks spiderwebbed through the earth, exhaling a fetid, musty odor that reeked of decay. A deep rumble erupted beneath them, as if the world itself were being torn apart. "Ethan, grab my hand," she cried, desperate as she regained her footing. But the shadows were alive, snatching at him, fingers like ice reaching through the cracks, hungry to claim what they sought. "No, get back," Sarah screamed, moving instinctively to shield him. The boy's eyes widened with fear as the figure, now a distorted reflection of her deepest sorrows, loomed closer, eager for the bond it sought to reforge. With one last surge of defiance, she thrust her fists towards the stones, summoning every ounce of courage. "You will not take him. I'll pay any price, but you will not have my son." The air crackled as a response, a swell of energy cascading through the clearing. Shadows recoiled momentarily, hesitating as if she had struck a vein, a chance of salvation. But just then, the ground beneath them exploded, sending a shockwave of pain across her body, and the chanting erupted back to life, a maddening wail that shattered her focus and drowned her resolve. All at once, a voice echoed within her, cold and sinister. "What will you sacrifice to survive, Sarah?" The ground beneath her cracked wide open, pulling her and Ethan towards the churning darkness, an abyss demanding payment. As they teetered on the edge, the shadows reached higher, their claws dripping with anguish, hunger burning behind their hollow eyes. In that terrifying moment, Sarah faced an agonizing choice. What would she risk to save? Her son? "Mom," Ethan cried out, fear igniting in his eyes. "Don't let go." With darkness clawing towards her, Sarah clung to the last flicker of determination in her heart. But as she prepared to counter this fearsome tide, the shadows whispered what she hoped she would never hear again. "The price is steep. What would she have to give up to escape? And would the sacrifice be worth it?" Time was running out, and the darkness was hungry. The abyss pulsed, a living thing beneath her feet, hungry and dark, waiting for her to make a choice. Sarah felt the chill of its breath, wrapping around her like a cold shroud. The shadows drew closer, tendrils of black curling around her ankles, pulling her toward the maw of despair. Her heart raced as fear flooded her senses, drowning the flickering flame of hope. "Ethan, listen to me," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. You have to be brave, okay? I need you to be strong. His wide eyes glistened with tears, confusion and terror reflecting within them. I don't want to lose you, Mom. He clung tighter to her hand, and for a moment, they became two lifelines in a sea of darkness. But the inevitability of the shadows grew clearer. The figure, this twisted manifestation of her past, loomed closer. Its face twisted into a sick mockery of love, mouth curling into a smile that froze Sarah's blood. You cannot protect him forever. He is a part of you, your mistakes, your fears. You must embrace the truth. No, she screamed, though the word felt hollow. How could she fight something that felt so intimately connected to her? The ground trembled once more, deeper this time, echoing the torment brewing beneath. The shadows' whispers intensified, flooding her mind with memories she tried desperately to suppress. The moments she failed. Ghostly specters of her past loomed at the edges of her vision, each accusing her with hollow eyes. Mom, the stones are there glowing. Ethan cried out, his voice a beacon amid the cacophony. She glanced down. The runes pulsed with a light of their own, wrestling against the shadows as if they were sentient, yearning for release. Was this their chance? Hold on, Ethan, Sarah shouted, and with sudden clarity, she sprang into action. She turned toward the stones, stretching her hands out over them, feeling the energy surging beneath her palms. Your truths don't own me. I reject you. As her words escaped her lips, the shadows writhed in response, recoiling from the light. For a moment, she saw it their true form, a twisting mass of sorrow and rage, and it terrified her. Ethan's eyes shone bright, reflecting her determination as the light of the stones grew hotter, but the ground's rumble faded. The shadows, cornered and furious, lashed out. Howls of anguish erupted from the darkness, vibrating through the air and rattling Sarah's bones. You will pay dearly for this defiance, they hissed, 1,000 voices entwined. Suddenly, a darkness deeper than the rest erupted, pulling at her with an unstoppable force. Like a whirlpool, it began to spin, threatening to draw them both down into its depths. What do you wish to sacrifice? The haunting voice echoed. Your son's safety? Your sanity? Or perhaps your very soul? No, she roared out, fighting the pull with every ounce of strength. She could feel the claws of the shadows tearing at her resolve, each question a dagger aimed at her heart. Would she cast her son to save herself? Mom. Ethan's voice was a lifeline once more, tethering her to the surface. I believe in you. In that moment, she felt something shift within her, an ember igniting deep in her core. A decision solidified. There were lines she would not cross. I would choose to protect him over anything, any curse, any memory, even if it brings me destruction. As surges of light erupted from the stones, Sarah pulled Ethan close, a fierce shield against the encroaching terror. Whatever you are, I will meet you head on. The shadows screamed, a mournful wail that made the ground quake. The bright light from the stones engulfed them, drowning out the darkness, momentarily illuminating the path ahead. But as the shadows shrank back, they whispered one final promise, chilling her to the bone. Remember, you invited us in, and just like that, the light dimmed, leaving an omnipresent darkness teetering on the edge of reality. What would happen next? Would they truly escape fate unscathed? In the looming silence, her heart thundered in her chest. She had fought, but at what cost? The true price of survival was yet to be revealed. What would emerge now as darkness and light clashed in a battle for their souls? Was this truly the end, or merely the beginning? The darkness hovered, thick and congealed like fog, wrapping around Sarah and Ethan, tightening its grip with each passing second. The pulsing stones, though still warm beneath their touch, flickered uncertainly, sputtering like a dying flame. Shadows writhed around them, now echoing with a deep, guttural laughter that filled the silence, mocking their defiance. What was that promise? Sarah murmured, eyes wide with dread. The walls of the abyss felt like they were closing in, as if the very ground desired their surrender. Ethan trembled in her arms, the cold seep of fear thickening the air. Suddenly, a figure lurched from the darkness, elongated and vile, its form twisting in on itself. It was an abomination, a reflection of Sarah's deepest regrets, each facet pulling at the weaknesses she thought she'd conquered. She recoiled but tightened her grip on Ethan's hand, her resolve hardening again. "Look away, Ethan. Don't let it in your mind," she barked, fierce desperation filling her voice. But even as she spoke, her own heart began to falter, truths beginning to surface like dreadful memories bubbling in stagnant water. The entity's voice surged with a melody twisted into torment. "You think you can shield him? You think your love is a barricade? You are as fragile as the illusion of control you try to uphold." It gestured towards the shadows swirling around them, each quietly whispering secrets meant to break her spirit. "Let him go," Sarah cried, fury igniting in her chest. She could feel the light of the stones start to pulse stronger against the weight of the darkness, yet it felt tenuous. They were losing ground. And then came the silence, sudden and absolute. The shadows froze, and in that stillness, Sarah felt the atmosphere shift. Something inside her began churning, like a storm brewing beneath calm waters. "What do you want from us?" she shouted defiantly, but uncertainty crept in. "Only what you have denied," the figure hissed, lips curling in a rictus of glee. "What you have buried. Accept it, embrace it. Your past cannot be vanquished. It is blood of your blood, fear of your heart." The shadows surged back, filling the void between them, swirling and coiling like serpents. Sarah could sense Ethan's panic, his muscles tightening, as he struggled against the besiege of the dark. She focused on him, his face illuminated with worry, and the fierce love she held for him ignited her spirit, bringing light to her uncertainty. "No, I reject you. I am not my fears. I will not surrender," Sarah shouted, feeling strength from deep within. She raised her arms, intent to channel the light, commanding the stones to respond. With each syllable, the runes flared with energy, pushing back against the shadows, but the darkness retaliated, crashing over them like a tide. Sarah's heart raced, feeling the sharp ice slicing through her soul. The shadows howled, a cacophony of rage and anguish that rattled her bones. "Sacrifice," they chanted, voices twisting with anticipation. "What will you give? We sense your fear, your guilt, your desire to protect. All demands a price." With every word, fragments of past choices paraded before her, decisions that had spiraled into darkness. Her first instinct was to shield Ethan from this torrent. But what if he needed to see the truth too? Was that the price she must pay? "Mom." Ethan's voice cut through her thoughts, small but steady. "I don't care what they say. You're not them. We will get through this together." The strength in his words ignited something raw, pure. Sarah blinked back tears, a fierce resolve igniting within her. "You are right, Ethan. I have to confront my darkness for us." The shadows screamed in fury, a piercing wail that echoed through the abyss. "Then face it. Your truth unveils the true horror." The ground shuddered violently, rupturing, and from the cracks surged memories vivid and painful. Faces of lost opportunities and past failures flooded her vision. These were the specters. They spoke of the manifestations of her dread. But as they closed in, she felt her heart quicken. If she welcomed them, would she break? Or could she find the way to break their hold instead? The flickering light of the stones intensified, illuminating faces locked in sorrow. And in that moment, Sarah understood embracing her truth was not about surrender. It was about reclaiming herself. "Bring it," Sarah shouted defiantly, focusing all her energy toward the depths of despair. "I face myself for my son." But right as she reached for the raw power inside, a shadow surged forward, darker than the rest, and whispered, "Then you shall know how deep the darkness runs." And just like that, a destructive force surged into her, what would lay bare within her soul. A suffocating pressure swelled within Sarah as the shadow's darkness engulfed her. It felt like a cold hand gripping her heart, squeezing tight, pulling her in, but at the same time exposing her to a terror she barely understood. A cacophony of voices screamed in her head, each one laced with a truth she tried to bury. "Face it," they taunted. "Face what you fear, what you regret." Ethan's innocent eyes darted around the shadowy landscape, searching for safety, his small hands trembling in hers. "Mom, I'm scared," he whimpered, the chill in his voice slicing through her haze of terror. The shadows seemed to echo his fear, twisting around them like specters relishing in their doubt. "No, I want to let it take you," she shouted, her voice straining against the rising howls of shadowed torment. But even as she spoke, Her grip waned. The darkness pressed against her mind, solidifying her deepest mistakes into grotesque forms. Memories clawed their way into her thoughts, dragging her down into a void where regret reigned supreme. Flashes of faces she wished she could forget: a broken promise, a failed marriage, a love lost and marred by her own failures. They rose like phantoms, reminding her of each burden she tightly held in the recesses of her mind. With every second, the weight of shame grew heavier, threatening to crush her resolve. Could embrace it. The entity shrieked, its voice a treacherous whisper that sent tendrils of ice creeping across her skin. This is your true form. Only by accepting your failures can you harness their power. You are alive because of them. They are your fuel. No, Sarah screamed, her heart racing with defiance. I want to succumb. As if reacting to her refusal, the ground beneath her roiled like a beast agitated. The pulsing stones they clung to flickered weakly, but in their glow, she saw the faces of her past reflected back at her, a stark reminder of everything she tried to push away. The shadows howled louder, angry for her reluctance, and Sarah could feel their cold breath against her neck. Watch closely, Sarah. Let it all come back. The entity contorted its form, becoming a dark mirror of her life. In its features, she saw her own eyes wide with terror and regret. This is what you fear, your truth laid bare. The nightmarish constructs twisted into dark reflections of failure, her daughter's fateful accident, the call she never answered. Sarah stumbled back, each vision churning her gut, but at the same time, rage ignited within her. This was not who she was. Ethan, she cried, desperate to shift his focus from the shadows clawing at them. You are my light. Don't look. Stay with me. His eyes remained locked on her, flickering with trust, the warmth of his innocence a shield against the tide of darkness. What if I am scared too, Mom? He admitted, voice small but steady. What if I'm not brave enough? In that moment, the dark figure surged, a shadowy grasp reaching out to consume them both. Sarah felt the tremor course through her as she focused on Ethan's small frame. Her fears for him were not what defined their lives together. It was their bond, their love, and her unwavering commitment to protect him. Together, Ethan, we can conquer this. She summoned every ounce of spirit and faith, recalling also the joy, the laughter, and the love that existed alongside her fears. The shadows recoiled, hissing, you can't. You don't truly believe. But she didn't falter. A warmth spread through her palms where they clasped tightly around the stones, and a brilliant light erupted from within their depths. The honesty of her love pierced the darkness, shining brighter than she ever thought possible. My truth is not my fear, Sarah shouted. My truth is love, and I refuse to be a prisoner of my past. The explosion of warmth surged outward, illuminating the shadows momentarily. The dark figure howled, slinking back, revealing areas of the abyss still hiding within the encroaching darkness. But within that brief light, Sarah saw a glimmer of something more, a hidden truth, a revelation waiting in the shadows still. The darkness writhed, retreating from the light. She felt a deeper tremor beneath her feet, unsettling yet calling her forward. What is it? She thought, dread curling in her gut even more deeply. Was there something even darker lurking here, a far greater horror poised to strike? With trepidation, she stepped closer, drawn to the pulse of that hidden truth, knowing they weren't done fighting, not yet. The air crackled with an almost electric tension as Sarah gathered every ounce of strength within her. The pulsing stones beneath her fingertips radiated a warmth she hadn't felt in ages. This was not merely a battle against shadows, it was a reckoning. Ethan, listen to me, she said, voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around them. We've faced the worst. But now, we must harness our fear, turn it into strength. We have the light. The boy's eyes shone with the reflection of her determination, infusing her spirit with a renewed sense of purpose. Together, he echoed, gripping her hand tighter. We want to let them win. The shadows shrieked, a dissonant chorus of anguish as the light from the stones flared brighter, illuminating their grotesque forms. They writhed and twisted, attempting to pull back from the truth that insisting on exposing itself. You think love can conquer all? A voice hissed, filled with venom and despair. It's a fool's dream. Not a dream, a belief. Sarah shouted back, her heart racing as she felt the energy radiating from the stones surge through her veins. With Ethan by her side, she felt invincible. The shadows surged forward, desperate in their rage, but the light expanded, forming a barrier, a protective cocoon woven from love and resolve. What will you give to break free from the chains of your own making? The entity questioned, lacing doubt through her courage with each syllable. I'll give my past, she declared, her voice unwavering. I'll give every fear that ever held me back. But know this, my love for Ethan is the strongest force within me. It cannot be extinguished. In that fierce moment, the shadows froze, as if paralyzed by her words. She could sense their hesitation, their ferocity waning against the power of her defiance. With passionate resolve growing like wildfire, she pushed deeper into the chant that bubbled up from her heart. Protect us, O ancient stones. Shield us from the darkness that preys upon our souls. Our love is our shield. The stones glowed with brilliant luminescence, pulsating in cadence with her fervor. The shadows hissed in pain as the light grew brighter, radiating waves of clarity through the chaos. As the shadows hunched closer, clutching at their own despair, Sarah felt something shift within the circle. Suddenly, an energy surged forward, pulling her attention inward. What is this? She thought, her pulse quickening as memories flooded her mind, not only the failures she defaced, but also the triumphs. The laughter shared with Ethan, sweet moments of joy, and the unbreakable bond they formed through adversity. Together, she screamed, embracing the light. The barrier shimmered and expanded, swirling around them, pulling the darkness closer, yet forcing it apart. The shadows seemed to scream in agony, twisting and reshaping, refusing to disappear. Leave. This is not your world, Sarah shouted, summoning every ounce of her strength as she tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. They were fighting not just for survival, but for their identities, for everything they treasured, that moment. As Sarah felt the heartbreak of her past fall away, the shadows began to disintegrate. When a voice whispered from deep within, it said, "What do you want, Sarah?" "I want freedom," she yelled, resonating with the power of love. Freedom from regret, fear, from the shadows that follow. We're no longer victims. We are warriors. In response, the stones flared, erupting with brilliant light that sent shockwaves through the clearing. The shadows screamed as the incandescent glow engulfed them, their anguished cries mingling with the howling wind. It felt like a cleansing fire, burning away all that sought to chain her. "Mom, the light," Ethan shouted, breaking through her focus. "Yes, this is our moment," Sarah affirmed, urging more power through their mighty connection. With a final assault of warmth and light, the shadows writhed and faded, their forms reduced to mere wisps. The darkness shrieked, but the brilliance encased them, unfurling a newfound clarity. As the last traces of the shadows dissipated, the clearing transformed. The stones pulsated with radiant energy, illuminating their surroundings like stars carved out of the night. Everything felt as if it was reborn. Sarah glanced at Ethan, whose face was alight with wonder and relief. Did we do it?" he whispered as the remnants of their terror evaporated into the night. Together, she assured him, pulling him into a fierce hug. "We faced our past. We broke the cycle." The shadows of her memories lingered, but they no longer clung to her heart with claws of despair. Instead, they became echoes of wisdom, lessons learned through pain, now transformed into strength moving forward. Ethan gazed wide-eyed at their surroundings, a sense of hope radiating from him. "Will they come back?" he asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Not if we continue to stand strong together," Sarah replied, fingers entwined with his. "We've embraced our light and our truth. We'll keep fighting side by side." As they stepped away from the stone circle, the moon rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow upon them. They emerged, victorious but transformed, alight with the power of their bond, ready to carve a path beyond darkness and into a future forged from love and resilience. As they walked home together, Sarah felt lighter. The weight of past mistakes diminished, painted with the brushstrokes of hope. No longer were they haunted by shadows, but instead were molded by the enduring strength they already forged together. "Mom, are we really free?" Ethan asked, looking up at her with a smile that warmed her heart. Absolutely, Sarah said, squeezing his hand. As long as we carry each other's light, we will always be free. And with that belief anchoring them, they moved forward, unshackled from fear, ready to embrace whatever life had in store. That was their legacy, now a promise that love would always prevail. Now, if you've enjoyed this conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to stay updated on all our next exclusive stories. Don't wait even one more second to smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood that comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear what you all think. And remember, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the channel.